I feel like sometimes a rough transition between.
Okay, so tactics. What are you doing to fix that? There's lots of things you could do to fix that.
Yeah, I should just be, I guess, practicing switching between boxes, going up and down.
Yeah. I break that up into two different kind of systems. You got like slide transitions and leap transitions. So like a slide I'm sure we all know the slide and blue scale, right? Yeah, that's like the if you ever pick up like a 90s guitar teacher book, or like any of those guitar magazine things, so like learn your pentatonic scales and then learn this one because you never have to open your fingers more than a tone. So that's a good illustration of slide transitions, right? Like we slide up the fret with one finger. And that's pretty cool. I think a cooler one that will actually end up being faster after the fair amount of work you'd have to put on it is a leap transition. So if we were, say, doing right? So what I did there is skip a box entirely, right? So I visualized my first finger hitting here, which is the next note in the scale, and then continue up box 2, start at box 5, box 2, box 4. Right? And the cool thing about those transitions is they can be really clean and very fast because you're essentially still doing the same thing with your left hand as you would normally do, right? You're doing pointer finger, next finger, pointer finger, next finger. The other thing it does is it cleans up your picking immensely. One problem with doing the slide is we get 2 notes per string, and 2 notes per string is great, right? Pentatonic scales work nice and easy. But if we then break that up with a 3 in the middle, right? Either I have to switch my picking angle where I start going free stroke down, rest stroke up, or I have to kind of double up with a down, like a sweep, which can be complicated. I think you've got to practice both, and sort them out. But you can practice it, as part of what I want to start this thing with. We're like, it's 8 past. I'm assuming no one else is coming. May as well give it a roll. Yeah, so drills. One of the things we didn't do a lot last semester was talking about, the kind of practice drill you might put in with some of this gear for a while before you can then start turning it into something that's, music more instinctively. My attitude is always, you practice things until you get them competently under your fingers and you get them to a stage that is reliably proficient. So if I'm looking at speed, then I might give myself, I've got to be able to just drop in at 80 beats a minute, 6 couplets, or 100 beats a minute, 6 couplets, whatever the figure is. And I should be able to just drop into that without having to warm myself up into it. To do that, you've got to do lots of legwork. So it's just like going for a run each day. You've got to put your metronome on and just play for 5 minutes just doing your scales. Inside of doing your scales, though, there's lots of different options. So like we did one last term, it was like that. Right, it's a slide transition. You could do the same thing with your leap transition. Right? Which would be a good way of getting used to kind of sighting a box further. That's the other nice thing about leap transitions is that we get really comfortable sighting adjacent boxes, but less comfortable sighting what a box is like, say, here on the neck, when it's totally disconnected from here. So I think today we're largely going to talk about, say, pentatonics and triads to kick the term off in a little bit. Have you both had a look at the sheet that was sent through, or have you got it with you too?
Yeah, I opened it up on Word, and the writing is like light gray, like I can barely read it.
That's weird.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was because am I on a Mac and is your a PC? Is that?
Yeah. Can like Control N and just change the font color? It's a doc file.
Okay, let me have a look.
How about you, Lily?
Oh yeah, I've got it here.
Yeah, I mean, you could see it there. That's what it should look like. Black on white like normal.
Oh yeah, all good.
They're mostly for a little bit of reading exercises. So I think what might be a good start would be to say doing probably your triads drill, so major and minor, doing and then in minor. All right. So do you both know both of those now? Yep. Really?
Was that on the bottom 3 strings? Or the top 3?
I'm doing all of these are on DGB today. And I might keep it on DGB for a couple of lessons. Obviously, I think in your own practice time, you should expand it out to include the other strings. But DGB is a nice kind of enough information that it's very easy. Like you only need to go 1 string up to then get your high string involved, and then you got another 2 strings down. So like they're also really identifiable shapes. Like you should be able to like see in this one, it's the middle of the C shape, right? In this one, it's that A shape or G shape, depending on how you want to look at it. And this one's the E shape, which makes them really, really identifiable. And later on in this lesson, we're going to talk about extensions. And part of what I wanted to give you was a way of looking at your neck, so you can go, oh, here is the extension I might need to add. If I'm playing an E chord and I want to add my 6, I know that I've got a 6 here and a 6 here. So I can just, or that's right, to add my, there goes 6. So I was thinking what we could possibly do, because there's going to be some lag, is I could set a metronome here. If you guys mute both of your audio feeds and you guys could play along. Before you mute your audio feed, we've got to find out a tempo that's going to work for everyone. I was thinking we'd start pretty generously, like slow with a 60 probably. Is that too much time pressure for your changes? So that would be. Yeah. So
what are we playing? What chord?
the inversions of, so kicking off right where we left off last term, the inversions of C at the moment.
Oh, C.
So this is C, 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 C. Starting on first inversion. All right, want to keep it as a cycle going for a couple of minutes. I'll count us in. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, do you all feel fairly refreshed on the majors? You could just thumbs up and your mics are off. Cool, all right, let's do minors then. Lily, eventually you're gonna have to tilt your cam down so we can see your fingers as well. But like, if you're comfortable right now, don't worry about moving it around too much. Okay, so minors, starting with the C minor position. One thing that's really important is that you kind of connect your major and minor shapes together. You know that this is the major shape and that's the minor shape. Right? Same in all the positions. Major, minor, major, minor, major, minor. Sorry, the top one obviously is. That's because one, you got to know where your third is. That's unbelievably important for so much improvised music, and it's unbelievably important for so much composition. It's also the only note in a triad that is a color tone. Right, your root and your fifth, they might be very strong resolutions and they feel like they tie in really well with the chord, but they don't tell you anything about chord. Doesn't tell you if it's happy or sad, doesn't tell you if it's suspended. It's the third that gives you all the value. So it's a really important note to focus in on. Okay, same exercise with the minors. We're gonna start on C minor, go up all the way. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, I started myself laughing. I can't stop. All right, so a couple of things on doing this kind of practice. One, it's important that you do these kind of things for a duration of time. I think it's important to set personal barriers. Maybe start with 30 seconds, push it up to a couple of minutes. I have done these kind of exercises before. There's metronome apps on, metronome videos on YouTube, and they last for 10 minutes. And I've tried to do exercise like this for the entire 10 minutes. It is a crazy discipline exercise. It's amazing how much your mind just wants to wander because this is a fairly simple piece of information. And I think the thing is that with people who are really proficient, simple information is totally bulletproof, and they are capable of doing it over and over and over again because it takes no clock cycles for their brain to do it. And that's kind of what you're aiming for. The other thing is, as your mind starts to wander, you will start finding little mistakes that pop in, all right, especially with scales. And those little mistakes are actually really informative for you. They're little areas where when pressure is applied, i.e. boredom or say an audience, where the mistakes happen, cracks start appearing because something's a little iffy about it. So it's really great diagnostically to make sure you go through scale exercises and stuff for a period, all right? That doesn't mean it becomes part of your daily thing. It totally could do if you're really geared up to really improving this kind of playing. But I would say once a week, it's worth a check-in. Do set yourself a challenge of, I'm going to do this for this amount of time, and I'm going to find out what happens. What is very likely to happen on scale passages is that you're likely to find out the weaknesses in your technique. It is extremely difficult to keep a scale running for 10 minutes unless you have nice, relaxed, fluent technique. You will definitely start missing strings, missing notes, falling over, or you'll just find things like, my wrist starts hurting, all right? You don't notice that the technique you're using isn't particularly great. It's wearing on your body until you do it for that length of time, and you have to make yourself keep something consistent for that length of time, all right? So it's a good idea. It's something that you should add to your practice. The more serious you get about becoming a better guitarist, all right? Now, this kind of stuff is great for giving us the tools we need in order to do something musical, but it's going to be that dividing line I have between guitarist and musician, right? This makes you a better guitarist. It makes you a better gymnast. You are physically more superior on your instrument. It doesn't necessarily mean you make better music. Musical exercises are what develop your musicalities. More on that later when we get to musical exercises. One thing to take a little look at today, we're still in the key of C. What I'd like us to do is play ascending sixes. All right, we're going to go between the G string and the B string. It's going to look like this. I'm going to see if I can zoom in enough on my fretting hands. So just in pentatonic. First six, second six. And backwards. Yeah. Right. The idea is that you're just doing your pentatonic scale. You're only doing it on those three strings, and you're just climbing the neck. All right. Have a crack at it by yourselves, trying to sort it out. Would it annoy you for me to practice it in the background, or would that help?
Might help, I think.
Okay, cool. Nah. What I'm doing when I'm citing that scale is I'm citing my entrance note on all of them. So I start on D, and all of them start with pointer finger, right? Essentially. First note I'm starting. First note. So I'm visualizing my pentatonic really on this string. All right. So if I start here, then just go up 6 horizontally. I know my next note is going to be the second note on the D string, which is going to be there. And put my first finger there. Another group of 6. I just played that note. So now I visualize the next note of the scale, this one. Come up here, do 6. That was the note. That's the next note. Come up and do 6. That was the note. That's the next note. Come up and do 6. That one, that one. All right. It's an interesting skill to get into with patterns, where what you do is you cite kind of the key note in the phrase. I don't know if you found it with, if you've been doing a lot of like what I might call like linear 6s or linear 5s, where you might do, say, instead of like Eric Johnson 5s, Eric Johnson 5s and 6s kind of cheat. They go. We love those ones because they're really, really, really easy to finger. And the reason it's a cheat is because you might notice the order of the 6s goes, right? We skip this note. I would say a linear 6s pattern is one that would take a 6 pattern off every note in the scale, not just the ones that are convenient for our fingers. So that'd be something like this. And when I'm practicing that, what I'm really kind of doing is in my head going, da, 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 right? I'm only focusing on the first note in every 6 and letting the 6 become a cluster of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't even need to focus on that. My fingers are doing that while I'm thinking, that's my next note. That's where I think my first finger is going to go. And I'm going to play 6 from there. Right? I think one of the problems when we initially learn patterns is that we can't cluster the notes. We want to focus on every single note, and it's really easy to get lost. You're going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. And that's 6 for every note in the scale, and there's 12 notes in the scale. So we've got at least 36 notes we're focusing on. All right, hold on, 6 12s are not 36. That's really, really bad maths. That's all right, we're musicians. We don't need to think about these kind of things. So if possible, it's good to think of them as a clump, right? Like I'm just running 6 notes down that scale. I don't really need to focus on it. What I focus on is, and my next note, da, da. So after I go, all right, it's the same 6. Should have transitioned. Okay, so that climbing practice is going to be particularly relevant for today because the first exercise that I want us to talk through, next week, I want to practice that climbing pattern. Next week, I think it'd be great to do that with a metronome. I think it would be great to do it at 6 tuplets, but if we're doing it at 6 tuplets, because 6 tuplets feel cool, and there's a couple things I'd love to talk about 6 tuplets. No, it's too fast for you guys, I think, at the moment. So maybe target tempo of 40 BPM. Okay, 40 BPM is not too bad. If you don't like 6 tuplets, we can do it in triplets at a faster click. The cool thing I like about 6 tuplets, just before we move on to the actual meat of the lesson, is I think they're really great at explaining the microrhythm problem, right? Like gross rhythm is you're playing 6 tuplets, you divide the beat in 6 and you actually hit those on the right time, right? But the way you express that and the accents you put into them really change how that feels. With 6s, you know, I was a Led Zepp fan, listened to a hell of a lot of Led Zeppelin across my time, and John Bonham is obsessed with 6s. A lot of his fills, right? Listen to the pattern, right? There's 2 accents, 1 in every 3. It's really fascinating to play with things where you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The counting doesn't change speed, but it feels like it does because the accent groups change, right? And that's a really fun thing to play around with in your scales, like yeah, 2 pulses against 1 pulse. It's one way of taking simple rhythms and making them speak, making them come alive. And it's really what good players are doing all the time. They're doing it subconsciously because what they're doing is kind of speaking what they want to play in their head and the accents are following. We can program that control into our hands by practicing intentionally with accents and thinking about different ways of expressing rhythm, right? Drummers practice this way all the time. You give a drummer a set of 16th and he's like, right, well, that's 3 weeks worth of homework. I'll put an accent on 1, I'll put an accent on 2, I'll put an accent on 3, I'll put an accent on 4, I'll put an accent on 1, 3, I'll put an accent. I'll change the volume of the accents. I might do a big accent on 1 and a small accent on 3, right? Drummers are fantastic at this stuff. Or I'll do it on right hand, or I'll do it on left hand. And we should think a lot more like that, right? How can I change accent patterns? Could I do something that's really weird? Could I do like a set of 6s where I do an accent in 1 and then 5, 6? So yeah, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 5, 6, 1, 5, 6, 1, right? Like there's a lot of options there, and it makes a lot of play inside of your rhythm practice. You whack on a metronome, you're like, today I'm going to feel like this rhythm because that sounds cool. And that's how I will practice my scales. And that's how you're going to get into a much deeper connection with your subdivisions, right? They're not just, they won't be something that you have to work out. They'll be something that you can feel. All right, let's go to the unmute section and we'll have a look at the page, the paper. Have you gotten into state you can see it, Sean, or is like, I'm happy to like read it out. If you can't solve it, maybe what I can do is take screenshots of the pages and send them to you.
No, it's all good.
Cool. All right, up the very top of the actual content of this lesson, we have the famous tetrachord diagram. If you aren't sick of seeing it yet, you aren't obsessed with it, then I don't know, I haven't been doing my job properly. It's super, super, super handy. It's going to keep coming back at you. So I may even include at the top of every sheet we talk about some kind of intervals. Right, just to recap on some ideas from last year. If we look at the pentatonic, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, they're all the notes that work easily, right? There's only also 2 notes past a triad, you might notice. We have 1, 3, 5, so we have this nice little triad, and then 2 and 6, right? They are the extensions that work the easiest. They're the ones where you're doing a pop song, you got a G major chord, try G6, try G add 2, right? This is how you can start playing around with chords you're already playing. So what I would like us to do as an exercise, and this is kind of a reading exercise, is take a look at the first set of written music. Can anyone recognize those chords by looking at them? Can you just at least tell me something about the chords by looking at them?
It's a first inversion.
Yeah, right. First, second, root. What first inversion is it? If we're looking at the first one, remember that in a first inversion, you took the root from the bottom and you moved it up top. What's the highest note in the chord?
It's the first inversion.
C first inversion. Well, that seems really familiar to what we were just practicing in the drills. So which one's C first inversion? Yeah. You got it, Lily? All right, so when we just did that drill, all right, we were doing first inversion, second inversion, root inversion, first inversion. All right, so hopefully, because I couldn't really see your hands, Lee, I'm hoping that you were playing along with that drill, so you know where those locations are. But what we can do with the music is cheat a little bit, all right? I always thought when I started to learn music that it had to be this thing where you just look at the notes and understand. Yeah. And I actually think a much better way of reading is kind of cheating, supporting all of your reading with theory knowledge. You see that's a first inversion chord, you see it's a C first inversion. I can then go to my knowledge of my practice, of my drills, and go, I know a first inversion C, there's one there. All right, there are other first inversion Cs too, like I could do, say, this first inversion C here. Right? One of the ultimately confusing parts about the guitar is they have exactly the same notes in them. Right? They're both E at that point in the stave. So it really doesn't matter which section of the neck I read the exercise on. However, for today, we're going to read it on the DGB strings because that's where we warmed up and practiced all of our inversions. So here is our first inversion. If we then look at the music next to it, we see that at least 3 of those notes, right, are in the inversion anyway. So we only need to work out where 2 of them are. And we can see that it's the 3rd note along is the one that we don't know. That's the first one we don't know. We do know E, we do know G, but then we have this next note. It's one step up alphabetically, so it's an A. All right. We could think about it that way. We could say it's A, and then we need to go G, G sharp A. But for fun, I think the exercise you should challenge yourself to is, what number is it? Well, this goes 3, 5, and then 6. Right? 3 is E in the key of C. G is 5. A is 6. How far apart is 5 and 6 according to your tetrachord diagram?
A tone.
A tone. So we go up a tone. 3rd, 5th, 6th. All right. This is something you need to consciously acknowledge to yourself. I mean, I think even more important than the notes themselves is understanding scale degree. Right? There are lots of players who play incredible music who can talk notes, but they find it much easier to talk degree, and they constantly think in their head in degree. And that's it's very understandable. From an improviser's perspective, I don't know if you've ever done things that changes keys. It's annoying to me as hell to track the notes that change rather than just going, I'm in a different key, like I'll recenter where 1 is. And I don't think I mean, it's one of the curses and blessings of the guitar, really. But if I'm going, I wasn't even really paying attention to what keys I was changing to, but I was in my head going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I always know that 1, 7, 8. Right? Like I always know where my 1s, my 3s, and my 7s are. But it would take me a second to go, oh, wait a minute, that's E flat, that's G. etc. All right. Now, as a guitarist, I have found that a far more useful skill. Guitarists are usually fantastic transposers. Pianists, not so much. Pianists usually play something in the key of E, and you're like, we're going to play an E flat today. They will cuss you out because it's a big deal to them. Whereas for a guitarist, it's like, what do you mean? Done. Key of E flat, we move down a fret. Okay, so on this, 3, 5, 6, 1, and then we need 2. Again, we look at the tetrachord diagram and we have a look at 1 and 2. We see that 1 and 2 is a tone apart, so we go up a tone. Okay, so important things to write down in your brain at this point. Okay, if I know where 5 is, 6 is a tone ahead. If I know where 1 is, 2 is a tone ahead. Let's take that idea to the next inversion. If we go to second inversion, all right, second inversion goes 5, 1, 3. 5 is good. We want 6. 6 is a tone ahead. You got to figure out what that is. You go to 1. We want 2. 2 is a tone ahead. 3. So how's that going to look here in second inversion? Before I, give you the answer.
Sorry, what was the question?
So here we are at second inversion. From the first inversion reading, right, we understand that 5 and 6 are a tone apart, 1 and 2 are a tone apart. So this chord goes 5, 1, 3. So if we're looking for the notes in the scale, 5 is a tone higher, 6 is a tone higher than 5, and 2 is a tone higher than 1. So in order to complete this into a pentatonic scale from this inversion, the additional notes we'd add would be, so we get, in the diagram, it goes up to G, so it goes. You should notice it looks a lot like pentatonic scales you have practiced, all right? This isn't about new information, this is about the data points you need to store about the information. It also makes reading it easier. All right, you constantly come back to the music and you look at it and you're like, I have this collection of notes. If I know, for instance, that between 3 and 5, there's a minor third, then anywhere I see 3, if I move up a minor third, I'll get to 5. And we know that from a lot of arpeggiations, right? No matter where you find it on the neck, upper tone from a major 3, upper minor third from a major third, confusing way of saying it, is always your 5th, all right? It's a major third from a minor third. So if you're on a minor third and you've got a major third, that's where you find the 5th. So we get this. Right, and we get our root position. Now, in the root position, I think this is going to be a fun place to discover another way of moving a tone on the guitar neck. We've been talking about tone as always up 2 frets. And that's great if what we want to do is come this way. With this fingering here, I don't want to do that too much. Right, I can do it, right? Totally doable. It's a fingering you should investigate. You might really like it. And there are some times when I would use something like that. Like if we're thinking of doing, if you hold that note on, you get a really interesting suspension. 2 against 3. You got the third here and you got the 2 in the bottom. Right, so if I play it in this order with this fingering, it naturally rings out that kind of 2 against 3 suspension, which sounds really nice. However, there's another way of moving a tone, and that is we go up a string and back to 3 frets. Right, so up a string and back 3. That's the same as that. And they're two different options. They give you different sounds. So if I do, that looks a lot more like the sound of pentatonic box we're used to seeing, box 2. Okay. And it also opens up different avenues of playing. I couldn't do the John Mayer, which he loves. He always does the suspension. I got to say, I've stolen it off him too. I love the sound of a 9. Right? Anytime you see an E chord, pull a John Mayer. He loves it. Or, pull the little wing. But you can't do that with this fingering. This fingering offers you something different. It offers you a clash 2 against 3, which is an extremely pretty sound. It is, however, slightly uncomfortable. All right. We get similar options, actually, if we now take this back upper string and back a couple of frets policy. If we do that here in the second position, in the second inversion position, we are presented with one of the annoying problems of the guitar, which is what are the normal string intervals on the guitar? So E to A, A to D, D to G.
Fifths.
No, invert that.
Fourths.
Fourths. All right, except GB, which is no longer a fourth or a fifth. It's a third. So whatever number you've memorized for the rest of the neck, if it's on the GB pair, you take 1 away from it. So in this instance, if we do this, if we want to find the second, come up from the root, a tone, on the next string up to give us another one of these options, we'd have to go up a string and back 2 frets on the GP pair. On every other pair, it's back 3. On the GB, it's back 2. 1 less. I always explain that as refraction, right? Like when you stick a stick into water, the stick looks like it bends. So imagine the water line on the guitar here, just above the B string. Everything past the B string seems to go up a fret. Oh, sorry, back a fret, really. 1 less fret. So if we take that into account, we can have this option. That's really interesting. Again, we have this 2 against 3 clash. Sounds very pretty. Or we could do it like this, where after we played the 2, the dissonance introduced by the 2 is relieved by resolving to the 3rd. All right. This is why fingerings and how you express them on the guitar are really important. They don't give you the same thing. It might give you the same notes, but there are many different implications of if I hold this note against this note, I get some other chord based off the sympathetic resonance, based off things just ringing together, things that are suggested. So runs or things that you do here, right? That's quite a cool thing in a song, in a pop song, right? That has this kind of slight mystery about it because of the suspension that we're putting in. If we do this, overall, it has a more hollow sound. All the tension goes away there, but then we're left with this very hollow suspension at the end of it, rather than, which still contains the 3rd, so it has a different sound. All right. This is why you want to know what some of these options are. You want to play around with it as you're improvising, as you're just experimenting with your scales. It's like, well, if I'm practicing my arpeggios, and I want to do a sus 2 arpeggio, that sounds one way. What if I did this? That sounds a different way. Both are good. Both say different things. Both are worth at least experimenting with so you're aware of them. Okay, so new exercise for you to take a look at as well. Now, the other thing that you might want to think about, obviously we can't do it with this particular position, but in all the other positions, we've gone up, right? Here's your chord, and we're kind of reaching up from the chord. Well, it would be totally possible to do it going behind my fingering too. Same notes, right? That's something that you should think about, pay attention to. Maybe you do an exercise where you sit here in second position. All right, come up with some lines that use stuff above. What if we do below? It's going to suggest different ideas to you just simply because of the way your fingers feel under here. So you want to practice both, going down, going up. Okay. Moving right along. So we've talked about making this into a pentatonic scale. Now we're actually going to narrow the field slightly. All right. Sorry, I've got a note here that I really should stress to you guys too, just as well I wrote the sheet. It's really important to practice singing your notes around your triads. Like one, you should try practicing singing your triad. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. If I pick a note in the triad, I should be able to also sing the pentatonic notes around it. Let's see if we can do it. Da, 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 da. Da 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 da. There we go. Right? Practice getting used to those notes. Because if you can't sing, if you can't get on top of them, then you won't be able to play them when you're improvising. You won't be able to play them when you're composing either. The more you understand the notes around here, da 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 do dum, right? Like that's how you can start making your improvisations sound better. It's using more of that thing that you use when you hum in the shower and less of, I've done a lot of repetitions on this particular lick. All right, so a lot of this term is going to be focusing on how to lock into playing things that are more melodic. In order to get there, scrolling down the page a bit, we start talking about extensions. All right, so if we, instead of thinking about this as a pentatonic scale, right, which has both the 2 and the 6 in it, right? I mean, we could think of that as an arpeggio, right? Like it's an arpeggio that has both the 2 and the 6 in it. It's like it's a C6 add 2 arpeggio. Not sus because it still has the 3rd in it, right? But let's narrow it down a lot more. All right, let's think only of the 6. This is going to be a great way of you finding, say, how to make a C6 chord. If you don't know how to do that in 3 different positions, this is a good opportunity to find that out. So we think about our pentatonic scale. We try to think about where the 6 is located. So the 6 is located a tone above the 5th or a minor 3rd below the root. Right, tone above the 6, minor 3rd below the root. If we look at this first exercise in where we've got C6 written, there's a C6 root triad, and then I've got 2 6s after it. So you get C6 in the semibreves, and then all right, so after we've done that, we've identified where the 6s are, and we can start playing with it. My suggestion here, because I couldn't help myself, I know you guys are going to be having a look at the bebop scale this semester. Or did you do it last semester? I can't remember. I know at some point in this year, you're going to look at the bebop scale. This is a bebop arpeggio pattern. Bebop arpeggios usually have a lead-in note, a triplet, and then something on the exit. All right, so the one that everyone knows is like on a major 7 loop. Right? The 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So it starts on an upbeat, the triplet is on the downbeat, and we end on another downbeat again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Right? It's a fun little way of practicing this kind of arpeggio where you've got this many of notes. Anyone which I thought would be a nice, convenient kind of 5-note pattern, I've written out in this kind of triple pattern. Otherwise, we've just done quavers, as let's say crotchets. Obviously, part of your practice should be figuring out different rhythms, playing them in different ways. So that first C6 pattern, if we're reading that, we know that the 6 is a minor third below the root. So here's our triad. The 6, the A, is a minor third down. Then we start on the 6, we come up our triad, then we play the 6, which is an octave higher. That again. All right. It's really important that when I look at this triad, if I think 6, I know there my 6s just there. Right? Here's the triad, there's the 6s. If I want to use that information then when I'm playing chords, here's an E chord, E shape, right? If I want to have a 6 in, I know, well, hold on, there's a 6 here and there's a 6 here. Here's the rest of my shape. Okay, I've got to put like a pinky down here. There we go. I put a 6 on, provided I'm muting the D string and not adding a 7. Then I've got a 6 in. Okay, what if I take this shape and I want to add this 6? A bit harder. You can see there's a lot of this shape we're going to have to demolish in order to get this note out. So let's start out by putting a pointer finger on that note. Okay, now I've lost my bass, so I need to put the bass in with something. Okay, let's put the 3rd in, and then the 5th underneath. Here we go. This is another E-shaped 6 chord. It's actually an incredibly common jazz shape. And hopefully you can see 5th and 3rd and root from this shape. 5th, 8th, 3rd, and root, they stay the same, just with different fingers. And then what I do was I've got a triad there, so I'm a spread voice triad. I'm going to add the 6 in. Yep. So you can both follow how this is a C6 based off this E shape. Sean, you're looking dubious. All right, we'll walk through it again. Okay. This chord has a lot of double notes in it, right? You go 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. All right. Let's choose just 1, 3, and 5 from it. So we can cut it out to its bare essentials. 1 in the bass, 3rd is going to be on the G string, and 5th could either be on the A string or it could be on the B string. So we could do this standard spread voice triad, 1, 5, 3 on top and octave apart. Alternatively, we could move the 5th up an octave and do this. All right, now with this 5th up the octave, we have really freed up the A and D strings for other notes. So if we refinger this set of notes here so that we put the 2nd finger in the bass, we get this. Now this finger is free to go on the 6th. Now remember the 6th was an A note, just here, a minor third below the root. And this is our standard movable jazz shaped 6th chord. It pops up all the time. It's a nice sound too. The spread triad, like you've got this separation between the 3rd and the 5th, which is just a normal 3rd apart, but they're 2 octaves higher than the root. So the chord sounds very, very wide. And in between that, we put a 6. So we get this rather sweet 6th interval in the bass, followed by a 3rd on top. In the other one, when we do this, 6 on top, 5 in the bass. So I'm doing 1, 5 like that. You can hear that it has a very different sound. It sounds brighter with the 6 on top. And also, we're making this chord now out of stacked 4ths and 5ths, right? Here's a 5th and that's a 4th. And they're very, very, very kind of open and clean sounding intervals. All right, compared to a 6th and a 3rd, right? 3rds and 6s are kind of, they're warmer, they're slightly more dissonant. So this has a kind of a more closer, fuzzier feeling than something like this. Sorry. Which has a very open feeling because it's built out of open intervals. All right, so This exercise on the sheet, the one that you've got to take home and work on, is you go to C6, you do C6 in here. All right, then C6 here. Sorry. Then we work on the nines. We can also do the nines in slightly different ways, or like we discussed earlier. All right, because we find the 9 either a tone up or a tone above 1 or a tone below 3. Let's take a quick look at, because we are running short on time, I have definitely budgeted too much stuff. Take a quick look at the minors. So in major, the ones that are sweet and always going to work, and you should now, from this week on, just try throwing in whatever song you like. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it'll make it sound awesome, sometimes it won't. Some songs, it's really important to have just a plain major chord. And if you try to spice it up, you just weaken the message. But it's interesting that C6 and C at 9 are the least flavorful extensions we can put on a major chord, but they are the most flavorful, well, not the most, but very flavorful extensions to put on a minor chord. For a minor chord, it's -7. I always say to people, if you ever want to take a minor chord and make it less sad, make it -7. Right? Minor is dramatic. Yo, these are big. Really, really heavy sounds. And they're just plain minors. If we take that and we play -7 instead, here's minor, here's -7. It actually softens it. It makes it less kind of minor. And it's a mistake I made for years in some dramatic songs, just going, oh, I want things to sound cooler, so I'll throw in a -7. And now as an adult, I'm looking back at that and going, oh, you probably would have had a more dramatic song had you kept it to plain minor, or added, say, -6 or -9. Now, we were just listening to those in major, and in major, they sound, fine. They sound like a really simple, easy add-on. Listen to how conflicted a -6 is. So here's C minor. Here's C -6. Here it is up the octave. Like, la, da, da, da. That's quite dissonant. All right, here's a -9. I always think it sounds like tragedy. Yeah. La, da, 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 whoa. Right? Really, really, really sad stuff. So it's the opposite between major and minor. Again, if we took a major chord and made it a major 7, that's actually very dissonant. A major 7th is a semitone away from the root. So if we take a major chord and we make it major 7, that's quite a complex chord sound. There's an inherent restlessness generated by having a B against C, which is why we get that famous 1-6-2-5 progression, right? Is that B sets up a restlessness that says, I've got to move, and I'm pushing up a semitone, so it resolves in the A. The A is playing that C, which is why that chord progression sounds kind of cool. Anyway, same deal with our minor 11. So a minor 11 on, it's more of a sus chord because I can't put the third in there. It's, again, okay, the minor 11 is darker than the -7, but not as dark as a -9 or a -6. Right? So you can start sorting extensions in your mind between ones that are easy to use and ones that are difficult to use. So you combine all of the information we've done so far, right? Minor pentatonic. Minor pentatonic will tell you the 6 and the 9 for major chords and the 7 and the 4 for minor chords. Okay, so if we thought about this, that first exercise we did, We thought about that from the minor perspective, i.e. we're using A minor instead of C major. What we're adding here is the minor seventh and the fourth, right? So this one pentatonic scale tells you the two sweet and easy to use extensions on major chords, and it tells you the two sweet and easy extensions to use on minor chords. So what to do for practice? Play some of your favorite songs and throw these extensions in. It has to be on a chord that is non-dominant. So if you see a G7 chord, that's a separate thing. All right, we are going to break chords into essentially major, minor, and dominant for now. If you see a major chord, throw in a 6 or a 9. If you see a minor chord, throw in a 7 or an 11. The 11 is just the 4, of course. And see how you go, all right? So much about music is about experimentation. And really fascinatingly too, if you get far enough into this, where you put the extension in the chord is really, really important. So like if I take C major 7, that's spread triad with a major 7 in the middle. All right, well, if I put it on top, it's a very different sound. Right? If I put it in the bass of the chord, that's actually a really depressing sound. Like that's a conflicted sound. Alternatively, like what if I put the major 7th here on B against the root here on 1? The flamenco major 7th. It's really, really dissonant, right? It's not, I always think of major 7th as like people sighing, oh, you know, it's like kind of cheesy. But where you put that note inside the chord is going to change a lot about how it feels and is expressed. One of my personal favorites, C major 7 first inversion. Bitch record the finger, but man, it sounds cool. Alrighty, guys. So we actually do not have time to get onto building lines of composing. I'm going to, we'll go through that next week. That'll be the start of next week's lesson. Have you got any quick questions before we wrap up and I move on to the next one? Not really? Okay, well, as always, guys, hit me up with emails about it. This week is probably the last week we're not going to be looking at a chord progression. I wanted to have a nice, simple introduction to just thinking about some extensions. And then I want to start talking about how we use, say, triads to play some music, to go over at least 2 chords, how we join chords together. What we didn't get to today was actually some melodic analysis, which is something else I would really like to bring in, where we talk about looking at a melody and saying, look, here are the arpeggio notes and here are the non-arpeggio notes, and how are they being used and why? So that's going to be a really valuable thing. Hopefully we might start on that next week before we then move into some of the other stuff. Alrighty, guys. So catch you at the next one.
Thank you.
No, my pleasure, as always. Please let me know if you have any questions with practicing and stuff. I'd be more than happy to answer.
No worries.
Yeah,
See ya.
catch you in the next one. See you guys.
Yeah.